they should not have the power to inflict this hassle on their constituents. They should be serving them, not using them as props for a great egotistical political drama. But given that the system is happening, I think this is quite an appropriate response. Mockery.
But let's start by talking about another major figure in British politics, the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. He's tried to explain why he wants a by-election, and he's now tried to explain why the by-election with Count Binface as his main opponent isn't ridiculous. But Charlotte, I guess the question is it ridiculous? And if it is ridiculous, does that actually matter? That Farage versus a man dressed as a bin, is there a danger that could harm Farage somewhere along the way?
I sort of feel like that's one of those questions that's kind of answered itself in the asking. Is it ridiculous that Farage versus a man dressed like a bin? Yes, Stig, it is. Can I go now?
Yeah, no.
It is ridiculous. It is extremely odd that we are going to spend the summer watching Nigel Farage square up against this guy with a bin on his head. I was trying to think on the tube on the way in here whether there is any way that Farage can sort of jiu-jitsu his way into making this, me versus the establishment, something like that. I think the idea that they're all laughing at you would be quite a dangerous and powerful one for the people of Clacton, for people in general. The idea that everyone in Westminster is having a big laugh at people's expense, I think, is a very powerful
which they probably are.
I don't know.
Well, they're finding, in fact, are people in Westminster finding the situation funny?
Yes, they are. But is that at voters' expense?
Well, that's an interesting question.
So who is it who's taking the mick out of the voters?
Yeah,
is it Count Binface and the establishment who have rode behind him, or is it Nigel Farage? And I can really see it tipping over in the pro-Farage direction if he's clever. And I don't know whether he will be clever enough. He's certainly on the back foot at the moment.
There's also a question of whether we'll just get bored of it collectively, because it's not actually an active by-election, it's silly. And therefore, we've had the thing of Binface versus Farage. Rachel Reeves has made her joke. All of that's happened. We can't keep trailing around Clacton for 6 weeks pretending this by-election is meaningful, can we?
No, and Nigel Farage is unbelievably good at gathering media attention. You saw it in his giving this announcement of the by-election. He tweeted out, at 2 p.m, I'll be making a statement about my political future or my future in public life, and everyone was sort of fizzing with excitement for a few hours. And for a long time, it was just him ranting on about how hard done by he was, while all the cameras of the British media were focused on him. Everyone's got it live on their news channel. So he's
the British
skillful.
media was out to get him.
The British media was out to get him as they sort of platformed this grand rant about how unfair it all is. And so the question, I think if the other parties had stood, this would have been huge for Farage. No one would have talked about anything but Farage, particularly because we are about to enter a period of no parliament sitting. We are in between governments. No one's really doing anything. But he has really been rather stymied here. I think it's all going to quieten down for him, and he'll just be there kind of trudging around delivering leaflets.
I guess the question, Fraser, is does this harm him away? I mean, how ridiculous do you judge it to be? It's a great question from Charlotte. I've not heard it articulated that way. Who exactly is laughing at whom is a really fascinating way of actually describing this issue in Clacton.
Yeah, well, of course it is ridiculous. I mean, Count Binface is there as a uniquely British character who serves a rather serious purpose. He is there to mock the sheer pomposity of all of this. I mean, when he was there for the Makerfield by-election, that was there to kind of mock the process. Now, a British system where any MP can have a hissy fit and then mock whoever is forces constituents into a by-election, that, of course, is ridiculous as well. And Count Binface is making this basic democratic point.
And do you think, Kate and I have been trying to wrestle with this, what's a good number for him or a bad number for Farage? Because Farage got 46% last time. His base is going to be very energised because they won't want him to look ridiculous, you'd imagine. So say he gets 50. If Count Binface gets the protest vote, gets 25, 20, 15, does that matter at all, or is this just all going to be forgotten in a moment, do you think?
Well, to be honest, it's the juxtaposition. I mean, Nigel Farage wanted a juxtaposition of him versus the reviled establishment. He wanted to misrepresent a by-election as a kind of referendum on whether he's entitled to take 5 million quid from Thailand without declaring it. He wanted to conflate these two issues. He hasn't been able to do that, and he now stands held up to ridicule by Count Binface. So this is a rather elegant democratic point, if you ask me. I think MPs should not have the power to hold these by-elections. I was saying this when Zach Goldsmith called one over Heathrow, when Nadine Dorries called one over her not being admitted into the House of Lords, when David Davis called one over civil liberties. They should not have the power to inflict this hassle on their constituents. They should be serving them, not using them as props for a great egotistical political drama. But given that the system is happening, I think this is quite an appropriate response. Mockery.
And Charlotte, it's not, I mean, it doesn't seem to have ended the issue that Reform has, which is that Robert Jenrick is now also under investigation over donations, and there are some significant questions for Reform UK about their sort of conversations they've had with the Governor of the Bank of England.
Yeah, I almost want to say that doesn't matter hugely. Richard Tice, of course, set up that meeting with the Governor of the Bank of England so that they could discuss cryptocurrencies, and one of their investors, I suppose you call him, is heavily invested in cryptocurrencies. I'm not sure Robert Jenrick matters hugely to Reform, with no offence meant to him. I think this is a party that lives or dies on the back of one man, and that is why you see them all rallying behind him. You know, it's easy to imagine if this was another party of a similar size, say Lib Dems, Greens, something like that, although they're similar in different ways, they could just decapitate the leader, get on with their lives. But this really is a one-man state. So, yeah.
There's another way of looking at it, Fraser, which is the Trump prism, which is when people use lawfare against Trump, when there's the establishment in America or the state in America tried to do Trump on standards, on regulations, on infractions of either rules or the law, in many ways that empowered an electorate to vote him in again. And I guess the question, which I think is fascinating in this, is that how many people will be energised because they feel this is the establishment going after Farage? So there'll be more and more stories about financial impropriety. Whether they turn out to be true or not is not my point. There'll just be lots more stories. We're going to see a summer of stories about reform and problems with people paying money towards them, strikes me. Now, that could either be very damaging to the party, or it could be the Trump version, which is it just empowers them to say this is everyone out to get us.
Well, this is exactly Nigel Farage's playbook. And when he was over, actually, in America recently, Trump made the same point, that they're trying to use the same tactics on you, Nigel, as they did on me. But in America, their tradition of sort of politicized investigations is very different to what's going on here. The Parliamentary Standards Commission is completely apolitical, and it's quite simple. Nigel Farage took a $5 million quid gift that he didn't even tell others in Reform about, let alone his constituents, and let alone Parliament, as they are all required to do. Now, this isn't a kind of hounding, although he's trying to frame it as one. And the investigations into his other dealings, there's a very important story today about how he's been lobbying the Bank of England on very specific points about cryptocurrency. Now, why would Farage do that, given that he doesn't have a policy on energy, he doesn't have a policy on education? Why should he be actively lobbying on behalf of the crypto barons? Now, is that connected to the fact that Reform gets most of his money from crypto kings? Is that related to the fact that he got 5 million quid from a crypto king in Thailand? Now, this isn't a political setup question. This is a really legitimate question about the relationship between power and money. Now, Stig, you're right to say that perhaps the press interest in this may go on to make Reform supporters thinking, OK, we're going to dig down, we're going to back Nigel, they're all out to get him. It's not newspapers' job to increase or decrease support for Reform UK. It's newspapers' job to find the truth and to put information into the public realm. So the newspapers don't have a political agenda. Now, if this may well end up helping Farage, I've got no idea. Whether it does or whether it doesn't makes not one blind bit of difference to the journalist's duty to investigate.
Should we talk about the House of Lords? Because Sir Keir Starmer said he was going to abolish the House of Lords, replace it with something else, but he now wants to appoint 19 more peers as one of his final acts as Prime Minister. The UK has the largest second chamber on the planet, nearly 800 people, none of them elected by any of us. Charlotte, I was going to ask you, how are they going to justify this? Chris Bryant this morning justified it by saying we've got to deal with the reality that Labour's outnumbered in the House of Lords, and that's why we need more appointments. But the political duplicity of this is pretty tricky, isn't it?
It is. Didn't he also say that he wasn't going to have resignation honours? And I presume if he's making a bunch of new peers now, if it's
That's
not resignation honours, then it's pretty similar to them. They do have to deal with the reality as it exists, and I think that's a sensible and pragmatic thing to be doing. Is this going to cause a political problem for the Labour Party in the future? Probably not. I'm not wildly convinced this is top of anyone's agenda. Yes, it is.
You think people don't care?
I think if you push people on it, I think people would say a lot of people don't like the House of Lords, anti-democratic, da-di-da. A lot of people don't like it when politicians U-turn on things. So I think if you were to turn up with a clipboard and ask a series of questions, people would say they're not happy. Do I think anybody's vote will be swayed by this? Do I think anybody would raise it in a focus group? I'd be utterly, utterly astonished.
But Fraser, does it go to that kind of question about undermining manifestos? Because this was something that Labour did campaign on, and Charlotte's probably right. It's not going to be the top of most people's lists, but it was something that they made fairly central to their argument about redoing politics, changing it, doing it in a different way. And now Keir Starmer is appointing 19 more people into the House of Lords.
Yes, well, restoring trust in politics. That's how Keir Starmer framed it when he spoke about House of Lords reform. But like most other governments before him, he hasn't succeeded in getting it through. He's done phase one. I think it was like 15 hereditary peers, completing Blair's unfinished business. But most people really don't care about this. I mean, when you talk about manifesto promises, one of those promises was to make Britain the fastest growing country in the G7. Now that makes a difference to people. If that was true, there would be no cost of living crisis, we'd be on our way out of the economic mess. That is an important promise, as is the promise on jobs unmet, the promise on living standards, and the promise on building new houses. These were hard promises, and we've yet to see if Andy Burnham's going to try to wriggle out of them, saying, wow, they were Keir Starmer's promises, they weren't mine. They are the ones that matter. I think the House of Lords is a bizarre diversion from these far more important pledges.
Charlotte, you know Westminster really well. That's a very fair point you made. Just from someone, I'm an outsider to Westminster. The idea of appointing your bag carriers to become a lord, to get 350 quid, whatever it is, of a day tax-free forever, because they carried your bag successfully for 18 months, having said you're going to abolish the whole institution, and then still feathering that nest in that way, I think it's disgraceful. I mean, I actually think it's corrupt, and it's a banana republic tactic of the political class in this country to basically look after their mates. And it's not the most important thing, though, and you've both been very fair on that. And yet, if you pare it back down, it's a disgrace. Is that just not a disgrace? I'm getting my mate to be a lord for no good reason other than I want him to, and he gets a living for life in a vastly overexpanded second chamber.
I can completely see where you're coming from, and I what I'm about to say, I don't think disagrees with you, but it perhaps sort of sits alongside what you're saying. So the bag carriers who go in are quite vital to the running of the House of Lords. They tend to be younger, they tend to be in their sort of 30s, 40s, 50s, and even in your 50s you are the youngest person in the House of Lords pretty much. They are the ones who still want to do ministerial roles, for example. They are the ones who still want to go into government departments, they want to be whips, they turn up, they sit on committees, they do things, and they try really hard, particularly actually the ones that sort of probably, by rights aren't that qualified to be there because they really want to prove themselves. So I do think they add value to the institution as currently exists. Is it bad that they're there in the first place? It sort of is the same as anybody else, isn't it? The one that really winds me up is party donors. That I just find, absurd. I think the Conservative Party did quite a lot of that. I'm sure that we could be able to dig out some Labour ones that I haven't paid as much attention to as well. They haven't even particularly served their country. Yes, many of them will be successful businessmen who have created jobs, etc., etc. But there are a lot of successful businessmen who don't get that bauble. What I will also say as well is that 350 quid a day, it is tax-free. It's only if you turn up and you've got to do something. So you can't anymore just turn up, hang your coat up, check in. You do have to vote, you do have to speak, you do have to do something. And if you add it up over the course of the year, it only comes, and I'm aware I'm about to say a number that's above the national average salary. It does only come to 50 grand a year, and a lot of these people are professionals who probably could earn more elsewhere. If you do become a minister, it's unpaid, and that means you can't take jobs elsewhere. So it's not this sort of mega gravy train. It's a decent salary, but I don't even think, unless, I'm not quite sure where I am on inflation and various things and fiscal drag, but I don't even think you're a higher rate taxpayer. So
you're not paying any tax on it, though.
Well, that's true. That is true.
Because
true.
It's counted as a benefit, not a salary. So it's 50 grand tax free. So that's 100 grand if you were to earn it as a salary. So I do take the point. And some people really, it does annoy some of our listeners whether it fits in the top three things people complain about. Maybe it does, it doesn't. But one of our themes generally is how much can we trust the political establishment, because that's often raised, isn't it? As a
Yeah,
topic.
I feel the same as you. I feel really aggrieved by it sometimes. I think some of those appointments are genuinely terrible. And for people who basically, and we saw this, we're going to talk to Emily Thornberry about Peter Mandelson. We actually saw this conversation play out in the Mandelson evidence sessions about Matthew Doyle, which was basically, we need to remove him, we need to give him something. Is it some big job, big foreign job, big ambassadorial job? Oh no, we'll just put him in the House of Lords. And, you know, all the problems that come along with that.